Space Base. This is a dice-based game of engine building. The theme is space conquest or space expansion, but it's a fairly abstract game in truth. It is as much about space as Splendor is about gems, let's put it that way. In this game, you roll dice and you will then activate cards to obtain rewards, and you're trying to acquire cards to create powerful synergies that will give you more victory points than the synergies of the opponents will give them. The designer is John Clare, a designer of some very interesting and very original games in the last couple of years, so definitely an interesting idea in general. I was curious about the designer, about what the designer did here, and so I decided to give a try to Space Base. Let's have a closer look at the game, let's see how it works, and then in the conclusions we'll try to answer a question, which is this Splendor the dice game? We'll talk about that. Each player has a personal board, such as this one, that has number slots that go from 1 to 12. On these slots you place initial cards. Each player has an identical set of cards. They have numbers in their top right corner indicating the slot in which the card goes. 6 with 6, 7 with 7, and so on and so forth. Here you see a blue box that tells you the rewards that you gain when you activate the card during your turn. In the game, you will also be able to activate your card during other players' turns, and the reward that you gain then is the one in the red box. But while the card is here on your board, you can only activate the reward during your turn. We'll see how you gain access to that box, how you get to use the red box during other players' turns. Here you have 3 tracks that you use to record the amount of credits that you have. This is credit, this is currency, this is what you use to buy cards. Once you buy a card, and we'll see later how you do that, the number of credits that you had saved goes down to 0. This is income. Also, again, there are ways of gaining income during the game. Once your credit value goes down to 0 after you bought a card, because after you buy a card it always goes down to 0, no matter how much you wasted. You bought a card that cost 2, you had 14, you go down to 0. But luckily enough, when your credits are lower than your income, then boop, you place your credit next to your income. So that means income is like a recurrent amount of credits that you get that lets you start not from 0 after you buy a card. And this track here, very important, this is victory points. Getting to 40 victory points is what wins you the game. So each player has a board exactly like this one, and then in the middle of the table, in the middle play area, you have the market. 3 decks of upgrade cards. You shuffle them, you draw 6 cards, and you place them face up in a row next to each deck. These are cards that the players will acquire during the game, and they have the same boxes as we saw before. Some also have green boxes, which means ability that you can activate during your turn and or the player's turns, as opposed to blue only yours, red only other players' turns. And these cards here that are not the starting cards also have a cost, and that is the cost that you must be able to cover in credits to be able to add that card, to add a card to your tableau, to your personal board. Now, how does the game work? Well, pretty simple. The active player takes these 2 dice and rolls them. Then the numbers that were rolled, say 1 and 2 in this case, can be spent. The active player can spend those dice, but actually, interesting enough, the non-active players can too. You can spend the dice individually, so I can use these dice as a 1 and as a 2, or I can add them together, so I could use these 2 dice as a 3. It's supposed to make it a little more interesting that we have a 5 and a 2, so I can choose to activate a 5 and a 2 or a 7. At the beginning of the game, your cards are not very powerful, and simply all that happens here, if I activate my card number 5 with this one and my number 2 with this one, I simply collect 2 credits. Simple as that. So maybe it would be a good idea to use them together as a 7 use them together as a 7 and get 3 credits instead. So you record whatever it is the adjustment that the cards that you activated let you get. There are also other game effects, especially more advanced effects that let you, they give you victory points, increase charges. Yes, some cards have effects that require charges. So when you activate the card, if there are no charges there, you add the charge, and then to activate the actual effect described in the card, you spend a charge, which is one of those cubes. You have cards that let you create combo effects. For example, when you activate this card here, say because you're using a 10, then you can activate the effect of the card on the right or on the left. Basically, if there is a nice card on the right or on the left of this card, you get to activate it more often if you have this one here. So this kind of thing. You have then cards, of course, that give you victory points, which is kind of the point, no pun intended. You may have a lot of income out of cards, but no victory points. You're still not going to win the game. So this is what you do. The active player uses the dice, get whatever benefits, and then the active player can buy a card, again, by spending credits. And when you buy a card, since all of the slots on your board are already taken up, another card, that is on the board, will need to leave it. That is, when you acquire a card, you need to place it in the slot indicated on the card itself. Say I just acquired that 10, so I need to place it in the 10 slot. I removed the card that was there, and this other card, I turn it like this, and I slide it under. My board, and that's how you get to upgrade your cards, and also to get effects that you can use during other players' turns. So for example, suppose that later I also buy this card here. Now I place it here, and this one goes here, and you can have multiple upgrades. Oh, look at this, I have another card that goes in the 10 slot. So now this card goes, and this is how it happens. So basically, when you activate dice during a player's turns, it's just as normal as if it was yours. So the active player, say, rolled a 5 and a 2 and use whatever effects I wanted to use, but it also my turn, and I decide to use, I don't have any 5 and a 2 right now. Oh, look at this. The other player rolled a 5 and a 5, so the player could use 2 5s or a 10. I could also do so, and since I have passive player effects that are active, I decide to activate them. So I use these dice now the player has rolled, and I activate these 2 effects, and so I gain 3 credits, and I can also activate an effect on the right or on the left. Basically, you activate all of the passive abilities that are in the slot that you're using during another player's turn. So this is the idea. During your turn, you activate your blue effects or green effects, and you can buy a card where during the player's turns you can use the dice that were rolled to activate your red effects or green effects. And this is much it. You continue like this, creating better and better engines on your board, chains of effects, ways of collecting stuff faster and more efficiently than other players, and the first player to reach 40 points is the winner of the game. Well, maybe this is Splendor, the dice game, a little bit, and there is really nothing wrong with that. Splendor is a game that I like very much. It may just be one of my favorite light casual strategy games, and having something that reminds me of that based on dice, so with that random factor, is something that, well, I find pretty attractive. I enjoy space-based. I find it to be fun. I don't mind the similarity with Splendor, and that's really the same idea. You're acquiring cards that will give you in Splendor discounts, and here, of course, your cards are giving you credits, which is pretty much the same as discounts. On top of that, they're giving you some really interesting effects, and I have some friends that really like building engines, I mean game engines, having this card that activates that card that activates that other card that gives you a reward that you spend for that card, and you double the reward of that other card, and before I know it, you won the game, and I'm still here figuring out how to get 2 credits instead of 1. I'm not very good at these games personally, and I still like them. Look at that, I lose most of the times, the time that I play these games, and I still enjoy them. I like the challenge, although I'm not as good and proficient at it as my friends seem to be. There are similarities with Splendor. There are advantages, actually. There's a little bit of Catan, or at least that idea that Catan has popularized, that it is okay to get stuff during other players' turns. Of course, that helps you stay engaged, etc., etc. Now, in Catan, of course, it may be that theoretical idea, you can get stuff during other players' turns, actually doesn't really happen, because then your resources just don't hit, your numbers don't hit. Here, that is more than an hypothesis. It's a much more achievable goal, because you can spread out your acquisitions in such a way that in almost every slot you have effects that you activate during an opponent's turn. So you can much more reliably and consistently receive resources of the players during other players' turns than you can, for example, in Catan. And I like that very much. One of the things that I got to dislike after so many years in Catan, after playing it maybe too many times, dozens and dozens and dozens of times, is that you do have some downtime sometimes if your numbers don't hit, if you don't get resources. Here you will get something every time that somebody else rolls dice, or in most cases, especially in the second half of the game. And to me, that's an advantage. To me, that is an improvement over what was a really innovative idea at the times of Catan. I think it works even better here. So I like the fact that you can create your engine. I like the fact that you get stuff during other players' turns, and sometimes there are also decisions that you have to make, effects that you get to activate. Maybe you get a card that lets you activate 1 or 2 effects, so there's a decision there that you had to make. But at the same time, it's not like everybody's playing at the same moment and things don't become chaotic, because maybe the active player is making some decisions, one other passive player is making decisions, other players are getting their income, getting their stuff, and just happy with that. So the game remains manageable logistically in terms of gameplay. And something that that not everybody likes necessarily is that, at least in this base set, but by the way, this is a system that can be expanded very easily. But in this base set, there isn't much interaction, if any, really. Well, I may try to use some numbers and develop some numbers that will help me, but not you, because you've invested in other numbers. But I don't see that really being that much of having that much of an impact, or being something that's really viable to pursue. Basically, I'm creating my engine, and I hope that my engine is better than yours. So there aren't really many catch-up mechanisms ganging up against the leader, because I don't really have ways of affecting what you do, or at least if there are maybe some synergies, some effects that I haven't seen, I don't think those don't seem to me the prominent element of the design. It seems to me like a parallel race, so let's see if I get there before you do. And I don't mind it personally. I know that for some groups that is a big problem. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I enjoy games that are highly confrontational, such as war games, and I like, from time to time, I'm doing my thing, you do yours, and let's see who wins. My wife, for example, likes this style of games much better, because she doesn't like direct confrontation, so there definitely is an audience for games that do not have much interaction. But again, I can totally see how easy it is to expand the system in the future. I believe that I hope that the game will be expanded, because it will just be so easy by adding some cards to add new effects, and probably then we will have more interactive stuff going on there, people attacking each other, etc., etc. I think that's going to be very easy to do. As is, Space Base is a really fun game. It had similarities with popular games that came out in the last couple of years: Splendor for the engine and the progressive discounts, Catan for the rewards when you're not the active player, but they're cooked up together very well. They give a lot of flavor to the game, but it's a flavor that, although maybe reminiscent of those games, is very much its own flavor. It's a fun game. Production values are very good. I like the art, the way the cards and the components look. So definitely high marks from me. Space Game is a fun game. It plays well. It looks good. It doesn't have a lot of interaction, which may be a plus or a minus depending on your taste and your group. But in general, this is a game that I enjoyed very much.